Hello, teachers. Aloha. Welcome. Thank you for taking time out of your busy day to be here for this masterclass, Teach History Like a Pro. In this masterclass, we're going to explore a few ways that are very specific strategies that you can implement right away that should be able to get your students just a little bit more engaged, just a little bit more excited for class every time they step into your room. So I will try to provide as much value as I can for you in this 60 minutes. And then at the end, I'll let you know how you can learn more if you're interested in that. So let's get into it. So our objective, the goal is, this isn't a total teacher makeover. It's not a total classroom makeover because we just have 60 minutes, but we're going to try to learn strategies and a framework that can get students just a little more excited to learn history every time they step into your class. Okay. With the 3 strategies that I'm going to teach, we should be able to just nudge them in that direction. And if we can build on that throughout the year, okay, with the framework that I'm going to introduce to you, you should be able to see real progress over the course of several weeks, the end of the quarter, and then just keep building on it from there, and it can lead to results. So let's just aim for a little bit more excitement and engagement from our students, okay? Now, there is also a little workbook, a little guidebook that is right here that has important links and freebies for you. So please check that out. It should have been emailed with the link to this webinar. And if you don't have it, you can just send me a quick email and I can get that to you. There will be a link to the recording once this is done in here. So if you wanted to rewatch anything and, refresh even next year, you can do that. And then if you want to take notes right on here, you could pause the video and print it out. Okay, if you're watching the recording, so pause the video, print it out, or if you just want to take notes on your own, or you don't like taking notes at all, it's totally up to you. But I do think you will get more out of this training if you are thinking about, okay, how can I apply this? And if you are pausing to write, just like we tell our students, you're gonna, if you're more engaged and you're writing things and you're thinking through it, you're gonna get more out of it than if you're just listening. All right. And I know you're really busy, but I'm just going to nudge you to try to get as much out of this as you can by being fully present and by being engaged as we go through this together. All right. And then you definitely don't want to miss these. There's all the freebies. This is like, I don't know, $20 worth of free goods here that you can get and start using right away. All right. So let's get back into it. Okay, so just a quick overview of what we're going to be getting into. I'm going to just introduce myself really quickly if you do not know me or do not know me well. Then I'm going to introduce this new framework for how we approach history, how we think about what our main purpose is for our students. Okay. And because it might be different than, I know when I got into the classroom as a new teacher, what I thought my job was is far from what I believe it is now. And I believe like where I stand is a much higher, more virtuous, like standing ground that I'm on how I approach teaching for my students, and what they get out of it is just so much more than where I started. Okay. And then I'm going to be teaching you 3 specific strategies, how to open every class with bell work that works. I'm going to teach you 2 specific strategies within making history relevant. Okay. 2 ways we can get students to see why it matters. And trust me, that is a game changer when students start seeing that, oh, this isn't just like vague and arbitrary. This is something that's relevant. This is something that actually is useful to me in my life. Okay. And then number 3, the 3rd strategy is probably my favorite thing to do in the classroom. Favorite little activity is a history decision simulation. How to get students to be experiencing the past in a powerful way. All right. And then in the end, the last like 5-10 minutes, I'm going to just introduce my course if you're interested in learning more and continuing this journey. Okay. But regardless, I promise in the next 55 minutes, you are going to have specific things that can help you in your class. Okay. So aloha, I'm Dan Luer. I live on the Big Island of Hawaii in a beautiful little rural town. And I taught at a rural high school for 11 years, Title I public school. And this is I've been in education and doing somewhat, I live on a farm as well in 5 acres, and you might hear some chickens and stuff in the background. So hopefully that's not too distracting. But I've been involved in education in some type of teacher-like setting for 16 years now. I'm teaching part-time online right now. This is my 3rd year not in the classroom. I really, really miss it. But I actually started to work 1 day a week at my old school at an after-school program doing service learning projects with middle school students, which has been really fun. And then just, teaching 1 line of AP US history online. So in the bottom right, you can see my beautiful hand-drawn map of a sabbatical that I took in 2018. I drove all over the country, got to visit all different types of educational settings, public schools, private schools, religious schools, charter schools, magnet schools, outdoor schools, fully self-contained schools, schools for kids who are like a step away from prison, inner city, rural, all different stuff. So that was really fun, and it really helped me refine my craft and really spend a lot of time reflecting on what is working in classrooms, what is getting kids to meaningfully engage. And I get to teach you some of that today. Okay. So I was the 2020 Hawaii History Teacher of the Year, but to be fair, there was probably like 10 of us in the running, being a small state out here. And then since 2021, I've been building curriculum. I have video curriculum and so lots of other stuff, goodies for teachers to be engaging their kids in the classroom. And I have a teacher course, which I'll tell you about later. And also just been doing some teacher coaching as well. So I'm mostly working at home, helping teachers. So that's me in my studio where I am now. All right. So let's get into it. Enough about me. So I really believe that there's this 3-part recipe for engaging all students. And at my Title I public school, I had classes full of what I call reluctant learners. I generally would have 1 honors class with pretty motivated students or 1 AP class with motivated students. But the majority of my classes, inclusion or just at grade level, were full of reluctant learners. Not necessarily bad kids, definitely some knuckleheads and some pains in the tush, but the far majority of them weren't really interested in academic rigor. They don't really want to, like, they would love to get an A, but many of them are not going to work too hard for it. Okay, they'll go through the motions, but most of them are just trying to get to the end of the period, right? And I realized, like, everything I was doing, I would bring in passion, I would bring in excitement, I would be super like gung-ho about teaching Genghis Khan or the Crusades or World War II or whatever. But it helped a little bit. My passion, it always does. If you're passionate and you're excited, it definitely helps. But I still just wasn't getting the results I wanted. Because as teachers, we know that everything that's juicy about history, everything that's really worthwhile that we're going to get our kids to do comes when they're thinking deeply about it. Okay. If they're only scratching the surface, they're missing everything that's juicy, that's exciting and rich. Like, they have to dig to get there. And a lot of our students just aren't ready to get there. They're just not interested in getting their hands or their minds dirty, going through the challenging parts to get there. Because a lot of our students, if you have these reluctant learners, these totally disengaged, going through the motions students, they associate struggle with failure. Okay, once things get a little tough, a lot of them just give up, and they would rather tune out than be embarrassed by not being able to do the work. And they would look for attention. I'm going to get attention from my peers by acting out, by being funny, by being silly, by being a little disruptive, by getting into a power struggle with the teacher. Okay. And we need to change that. We need to get those students, the kids, the 10% of our students that cause 90% of our frustrations and our behavioral management problems. If we start getting those 10%, the most reluctant, the most challenging students, to start engaging and to start believing themselves, things change. So this is my 3-part recipe. Okay. And I want to just be thinking and reflecting which of these do your students lack the most? Okay. Which one of these, if you worked to stoke that fire of curiosity, excitement, or confidence, would pay off the most? So building curiosity. How do we get kids to start asking more questions? How do we get kids to want to learn for learning's sake? Okay. Because something happens to students by the time they get to us in secondary, right? Like middle schoolers, I think some of them still are a little bit more curious. Sometimes high schoolers, man, do they get jaded, and do they just get compliant and just go through the motions, and they're just over schooling, right? Elementary kids, like if you ever like go into a kindergarten classroom and the kids are coming in and they're excited and they're asking like great questions because they just want to know stuff, they get beat down by the school system by the time they come to us. So we have to reverse engineer their curiosity, get them a little bit curious so that we can pump that life into them. Okay. And then we want to build excitement. We have to come in excited to teach, right? Even if we're not really feeling it that day, we don't love teaching about, I don't know, the Silk Road. We got to be excited so they can get excited, but it's more than that. We have to plan activities that get them excited. We have to have a framework that's going to build this excitement over the course of the year, starting from day one or from the day that you're watching this. Okay. And then lastly, confidence. And I really believed my students, what they were lacking was between curiosity and confidence. The ones who are causing the most amount of frustrations that can totally derail a class, because it's really hard. If you have 3 students in class who are really causing behavior management issues, they're really being disruptive, they can really pull down the capacity of the class to reach a really high level of academic excellence. So if you can get them to get on board, gosh, is it a game changer? And a lot of those students lack confidence. They don't believe in their abilities to succeed. So I went to work on building up their confidence, not just like telling them they're great and not just giving them 50% when they didn't do anything, but actually having them taste success in my room. Okay. It's hard work. They have a long going story in their heads of them not being successful. And you have to help them rewrite it, that in this class, you can be successful. I am a partner who's going to help you. I'm going to challenge you, but I'm going to be flexible and support you along the way. And you got to find a way that works for you. Okay. Are they allowed to retake tests? Are they allowed to redo answers? Do they get some points for the effort? Whatever it is, how do you get to build up their confidence so they believe in themselves in your classroom? Okay, because you're not going to get them curious or excited if they don't believe in themselves at all. Okay, so let's move forward. This is something I firmly believe. I was in the classroom 1 year past COVID, the year after COVID, but I know that it's become a worse problem. So students might be more disengaged and skeptical of school than ever. Like, you can raise your hand if you believe that. But in my opinion, with the right strategies, you absolutely can get them excited to learn history and finding value in doing so. Okay. I will die on that hill. They might be more disengaged than ever, but I really believe a lot of them are actually desperate for a meaningful learning experience. This is actually helping me. This is actually interesting for its own sake. Okay. And if we can get them there, that's really our purpose, right? Get these kids that are disengaged to start engaging. Get them that are skeptical to start seeing value. Okay. And I'm just going to introduce a little bit of a framework to help you with that and a few specific strategies that go along with it. Okay. in the rest of the time we have here. All right. So I hope that pumps you up. I hope you believe it. You might be skeptical, right? You might be skeptical, just like the students are skeptical, because you might have been beaten down a little bit by students, cynicism, by student apathy, by students' disruptive behavior. But like, trust me, there are students that are acting like that in one class, and then they're shining in other classes, and you can get them there. You got to believe in yourself and believe in them still yet. Okay. A hope remains. Let's fan that hope. Okay. Now, this might be the average student, right? And you have good students too, and students who want to learn and who come in happy and are excited to do the work you're going to assign them that day. But this is the kids that we really need to work with, because if we can get this kid, the goal is to get them here, right? To get the kid who just doesn't really care to start being excited, enthusiastic, wanting to learn. But in order to get them here, this is the goal. Before you get them to drop their jaw in amazement and excitement, we have to first get them to raise an eyebrow, to scratch a head. That's where it starts. Just get them a little curious. That's everything. Curiosity is the lifeblood of engagement. Curiosity is the wind in the sails of engagement, okay? Without that, it's just compliance. Even the students that are doing the work and turning it in and getting A+, if they're not actually curious and wanting to learn and wanting to know a little more and coming up with their own questions, they're just teacher pleasing in some way. We need to build that curiosity and to make our classrooms ecosystems of wonder. We need to make our classrooms ecosystems of wonder and curiosity, okay? So we do that with these three things, okay? So here's the catch. The same old teaching methods sprinkled with a few fun activities, right? You did this cool simulation on the Black Death. You had this great hands-on activity for World War II. You had them in the trench warfare activity for World War I. They're throwing paper at each other. But if you're just doing the same old teaching methods most of the time with some fun activities here and there, that's not going to do it. We need a new framework. Okay, so we are not just going to teach students about history. That's what I thought my job was my first 3-4 years of teaching. Teach them history, teach them about history, teach them about what happened in the world. But that's not it. That's part of it, but it's not the holy grail. We're not just going to focus on delivering content knowledge. As juicy as history is, and as interesting as we find it, cramming their heads with interesting facts about history, dates, events, historical figures, that's not it. It's part of it, but that's not the epitome of what we're doing, okay? We are going to get students doing history. Not teaching them about history, we're going to get them doing history. Wrestling with big ideas and using documents, artifacts, primary, secondary sources to solve historical controversies. We're going to get students experiencing history, seeing themselves in historical events, imagining themselves as historical figures, and connecting to the dramatic conflicts of the past. In short, we're going to make history come alive in our classrooms. They're going to become time machines. That's what we have to do. So students aren't just learning about some dusty old events that people suffered through. We're going to get them to see themselves in it. We're going to squeeze the drama of history onto them, into our classrooms, so that they're pulled into the story. That's what we have to do. Then we can hit them with some content knowledge. That's important. But we want them doing history and experiencing it whenever it's appropriate. We're not like reenacting the transatlantic slave trade or anything, but we might be doing life on the Oregon Trail, right? We might be imagining what it was like for soldiers in World War II, okay? Not necessarily dying on the fields, but what it took to prepare, right? And all that stuff, okay? We're doing it appropriately. Caveat there. All right, now the rest of this masterclass will be specific strategies you can implement right away. This you should be able to implement tomorrow, okay? So I firmly believe the first 3 minutes of class is the most important of the entire day lesson, because no matter how awesome the activity you have planned, if you don't hook them right away, you are missing out on a major opportunity. Okay. So I just want you to think, do you use bell work in your class? Okay. I know some of you have short periods and it's like, oh, I have only 37 minutes. I only have 40 minutes. I can't waste 5 minutes on bell work. But I think most of you do some kind of bell work or some kind of do now. How do you use it? Because my first 3 or 4 years, I feel like I was missing a big opportunity with my bell work. And my chicken's very excited now that I'm talking about bell work. So how do you use it? I was using it mostly as a transition, get them in, get them settled, get them calm, get them thinking about history. But I was making a few other big mistakes because it's not just about a transition. Bell work is much more powerful than that. Okay, so here's some common mistakes that I see. And I really noticed these when I did my sabbatical and I went in hundreds of classrooms around the country. Some are just skipping it because they want to just jump right into the lesson. But I really feel like that's like starting the football game without doing stretching and without like pumping up the team, doing a little pep rally to get their minds all the excited to get into it. Okay, so even if you have a short class time, I think you can find 3 minutes to pump them up and to pull them in. Or it's a boring question. I used to do these, like, what is 3 things you learned last class? What is one thing that comes to mind when you think of World War II? What is something you know about the Boston Tea Party or whatever? It's just like, okay, here's something I know. Or you give them an overwhelming or a challenging question. Now, what I find is a problem with these, like, actually, let me back up. Beep, 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 beep. Overwhelming or challenging, I pride myself on trying to be like a rigorous teacher, pushing students to think deeply. And I thought the way to do that was to be rigorous from bell to bell. Okay, so I would sometimes give them a really challenging task right off the get-go, like analyze this quote and how could you apply it to your life? Like it was a little bit like they're reading a primary source and it's just too much right out of the gates. Now, think about your reluctant learners. Think about the kids who are really challenging in your class, who oftentimes don't feel like they can be successful. If the warm-up question, the do now, the bell ringer, is frustrating them, they're going to feel like I can't even do this question. And they might tune out in the first couple minutes, or it's so boring that it's just not interesting to them. Oh, great. I just suffered through math and language arts class. And now I have to, what is something that comes to mind about World War II? I don't know, fighting. Like, let's get them excited instead. Also, if you're asking a review question, what happens if the kid doesn't have a good memory? He's going to feel like, I can't even remember 2 things from last class. I'm an idiot. I'm stupid. And remember, we're trying to help them rewrite the narrative about who they are, that they are successful in here, that if they put in effort, they can achieve. Okay. So I really urge you not to do review questions or anything too challenging. You're not starting PE class with a mile sprint. You're doing some stretches. You're doing some warm-ups to get the blood flowing. Okay. So this is what changed things for me. Okay. This is my power bell work formula. I really encourage you to write this down. And remember it and try to see how well you can adapt this daily. Okay. My number one must have, I must have this for my bell work. I sometimes can't get all 3 because it's sometimes tough to come up with a question or a quick task that you can do all 3. But I need 100% of my students to be successful. So I can't ask them, what did you learn from your homework? I can't ask them 2 things from last class, because if a kid's absent already, I don't know. I have to ask for help, right? If the student struggles to remember, they already have to get bailed out or they're going to tune out. So I want 100% of my students, 100% of the days, to know when they enter my room, they are starting with a win. They are starting with an A+ moving forward. What does this do in your class? The whole train, all the wheels, everyone is moving in the right direction. It could still go off rail later, but if in the beginning of class, the first quick little activity, the train is moving in the right direction together, everyone's feeling pretty good, it's a lot easier to keep that momentum than if 2 or 3 of the most problematic students are already derailing things, right? Or already shutting out. okay? Because students see when other students are shutting out, putting their heads down. You're trying to have a good, rich discussion or trying to get them involved in some kind of movement activity, but a couple kids are just like dragging their, sour attitudes across the class. It's noticeable, right? And sometimes contagious. Okay, so I want 100%. That's a go-to. So I'm not going to ask any right or wrong answers. Okay. Number 2, I want students to be curious or excited. If I can get them raise an eyebrow, what's going on here? What? Really? Why did that? How did that? Who did that? If I can get them to do that, or be like, whoa, excitement, curiosity or excitement, or both. Let's take it. Okay. I want them to lean into the lesson. Right? Kids aren't coming into your class thinking the Russian Revolution is cool. You might think it's cool. I think it's cool. You got to show them why it's cool in the first moment. You don't get a first impression back, right? And the bell work, the do now is the student's first impression to the lesson. Make it a good one. Okay. And then number 3, I want students to have chips on the table, skin in the game. If I'm not much of a poker player or a fan of like poker, but I know I'm a lot more interested in the cards and the game if I have chips on the table. If I have something to win or lose, it becomes a lot more interesting. Okay. We want all of our students to have some chips on the table, meaning they have some kind of investment in the lesson. And I'll explain a specific way we do that in just a second. They want to figure out if their initial thoughts are right or wrong, or the initial thoughts of their peers are right or wrong. Let's see how we can do that. But before that, just one last little icing on the cake of bell work. Bell work is a daily confidence builder. It's not just a transition. It's a daily confidence builder. And who needs that most? The students that are causing the most frustrations in your class. Yeah. Bell work is a daily confidence builder as well as a hook to pull students into the lesson each day. Over time, this can transform the class culture and how students enter your class each day. It helps you in every single day, like it'll pay off in that lesson, but over time does it really pay off? When students know, I just bombed my science test, but I'm about to enter Mr. Luer's room and I always start off doing good in that class. I always, even if I don't do so well on the essay we have to write or the project we're working on, I might struggle on that, or the primary source reading, I don't have great reading skills. I know I start with a win every day, so they can at least look forward to that. Trust me, that changes things, okay? So this is a specific strategy to make bell work. Turn a learning goal into a prediction, okay? Prediction bell works. I love these. I do these at least once a week in my class, or when I was in the classroom. Most of my online kids now are doing asynchronous work, but I still do this when I can with them. Scenario, it's 1492. What are we doing right there? We're not 2023. You're pulling them into the past. A little bit, right? Just a little bit. Am I playing some either Native American music or some Spanish music or some music that like feels like it's from the 15th century? Yep. Why am I doing that? Because I want to set a different scene in my room, right? That matters. They're entering the class, the lights are off, I have some vibe lights on, and this is projected in the front of the room. What happens? It's kind of calming, and their attention is directed at their task, right? So if you have really rowdy classes, keep lights low, maybe windows like closed if you can, keep the lights low, this projected in the front of the room, and it'll focus their attention. Okay, so that bell work can still be a good transition and a calming, getting them settled, right? But it's more. We're also pulling them into the past with this type of bell work. It's 1492, and Christopher Columbus and nearly 100 Spanish explorers or conquerors have just arrived on a small island in the Americas. They are about to encounter a tribe of Native Americans, and neither group, the Spanish or the Americans, have any experience or knowledge of the other. This is a true meeting of people from totally different worlds. So they have to read 4 sentences. I would never make it longer than this, because you're challenging students, you're reluctant learners. If it's like 2 paragraphs, they might not go through it. I would keep it between 3 and 4 sentences. What do you think happens next as they start interacting? Make a prediction about what you think will happen over the next few days. Now, What do students already know? They already know that this lesson's what it's going to be about. They read a few sentences and they know that this what they're going to learn today has to do with Columbus, the Spanish, the Europeans, and the Americans. And now that can every student, even if they were absent last class when you introduced the age of exploration, can they still answer this? Might they be able to take a guess on what happens when two groups who don't know each other meet? Sure. Every student can do this. So 100% of the students can get an A if they try. Okay. Now, if your students aren't trying, that's more of a, you're going to have to work with them individually to try to pump them up, get them to believe, get them to see that you want them to be successful. Okay. But already 100% of students have gotten, even if they just made a prediction, there's nothing wrong. You want to make sure they know that. There's no wrong answers here. If you're trying, you're getting credit. And in my course, I teach many ways on how to make sure you hold students accountable while not spending a single second grading this. They can still get credit and they can still be getting points. So they're still really getting a win and starting with an A+, but you don't spend a second grading it. God, did I waste so many hours grading bell work. It's miserable my first several years of teaching. It's a very simple hack. I get into it in the course on how to do that. But so what's going to happen in my class, they either write it down in like a sentence form and they can explain what they think happens, or they can just list, right? So the students that like to write, they can, and the students who hate to write, they can just list and keep it shorter and briefer. The next thing I do is I have them pair share or share at their elbow groups. All right, share with your neighbors and then add to your list based on what your neighbors said, right? So now they're actually accountable for listening and thinking about what their neighbor said, and they can add maybe one thing to their list. Then what do we do? Okay, I regain their attention. It's quiet in class, except for the people who are sharing out loud. And then I'm writing their answers on the board. Okay, who'd like to share one thing they think might happen after they start encountering each other? Oh, they'll start to trade. This student remembered from last class, maybe, that the Europeans were looking to like get to China to trade, right? To get to the riches of from the East. Very good guess, Tony. Let's see if you're right as we get into the lesson. Who's got something else? And you're just tracking these. What you could do now, students already have chips on the table because they all took a guess on what might happen. But then you could take it a step further and get them to either like pull back some chips or put more chips on. You can say, let's vote as a class. What do we think are the two most likely things to happen? And then you can like make little check marks next to it. If you wanted, this is going to take bell work to be a little bit longer than just 3 to 5 minutes. But nevertheless, okay, so we think Shania's, the Europeans will teach them Christianity is going to definitely happen. Okay, we'll see about that. We'll put a check mark there. And that they're going to go to war. We think those two things are going to happen. Then when you give them Columbus's journal, or you watch a short movie, or they're analyzing some images or whatever it is, they are invested in figuring out if they were right or if their peers were right, okay? So with that, they're going into the lesson already thinking about what they're supposed to be learning. Their brain is on the outcome, and students are much more likely to meet the learning goal if they know what they're supposed to learn. If they know what the outcome is and they know what they're supposed to get from the lesson and they actually understand it, and because you did a little fun activity about it, you didn't just tell them, hey, we're going to learn about what happened when Columbus landed in the Americas. We're going to learn about the effects of Spanish colonization. No, you had them put themselves at that time period and think about what's going to happen next, right? So they already been scratching their brains. It got them a little curious. Hopefully they want to find out, do they go to war or do they actually like work together? Okay. Hopefully that's getting them a little curious, entering the lesson, right? So I love doing these to start the class. Okay. I teach several other strategies that do all three of these things in my course. I just don't have time to get into all of it now. That get all students successful, that get them to get curious or excited, or that get them to have chips on the table. Here's another scenario. You're a world history teacher at the high school level. I present you the King of France. Imagine students walk into your class and they see this picture being projected. The girls might say, oh God, that's gross. The guys might be really excited and like, that's so cool, that's awesome. But what happened? You just got them to lean in a little. You project like, if you can ever, like, this might not have been the best picture. It might have been a better picture to have show the Spanish and the Native Americans interacting, but that might give away some answers. But this one is an interesting picture. The more you can captivate, show something that's controversial, so something that's like super interesting, that's telling a story, you're pulling them in more. Okay. Scenario, it's January of 1793. After revolting against the king, forming a new government, and granting rights to the French people. Notice you just kind of reviewed last class, right? The revolution took a radical turn when they executed the king and queen of France. Make a prediction on what will happen next as a result of this. You could have also said, make a prediction on what caused this, right? Why did they cut the heads off? Depending on what the learning goal is. Are you trying to get them to understand why they did this? Or are you trying to understand like what happens with the Reign of Terror? What happens next? Okay. And that this one, list, explain, or make a quick sketch. Some of the boys, maybe some of the girls too, are going to really want to make a quick little sketch, maybe of a whole bunch of other people with their heads getting cut off. And it might be a little silly, but they're having fun with the lesson already. Right out of the gates, the kids are having a little bit of fun with it. Okay. Again, what are you going to do? Pair, share, talk to each other. They're getting more invested. They're hearing more ideas. You're normalizing classroom discussions. All right, share with me. You're recording on the board. What do we think are the definite outcomes? What are we definitely going to try to see today? And you can take, and over time, students are going to become more logical. They're going to be able to use like more historical evidence, like, oh, this happened at another time in history. I bet it'll happen again here today. This chicken is really excited about the French Revolution. Who wouldn't be? Okay. I know I am. All right. So I really hope that this is something you can use in your classroom. I just want you to think, what topic are you teaching tomorrow or later this week that you could turn into a prediction about work? How are you going to set it up? Is there a cool image? I would definitely have an image. And then what can you write in 3 to 4 sentences max to set up the prediction? Okay. I know that's distracting. Let's move forward. All right. Into the next strategy. Okay. So the next kind of strategy is we're going to make history relevant. I don't know if about you guys, if you ever heard this question. You ever hear your students saying, why do I need to know this stuff? Why do I care about Genghis Khan? Why do I care about the Crusades, ancient Egypt? This happened 4,000 years ago. Why do I need to know this? How will this help me in life? Raise your hand if you've heard this one before. How is this relevant? Or maybe they're just thinking it, but sometimes you can feel it. Why should I care? Worst, this is pointless. Okay, hopefully they're not expressing this out loud, but you definitely, I used to always get this question. Why do we even need to know this stuff? Now, I admit I'm a slow learner. I want to know from you, how do you respond to these questions from your students when they get it? Like if you ever a student asks, why do I need to know about Archduke Franz Ferdinand getting assassinated? Why? Okay, how do you respond when that happens? I went through kind of a metamorphosis, 3 different changes on how I approach this question. First, I would get frustrated and kind of hopefully not showing it, but I would be feeling very frustrated and annoyed when a student asked it. I would say, I would be thinking, I told you guys week 1 why history matters. I went over that like with the syllabus, like why we need to know this stuff and helps us understand the present. Why don't you like realize that? Or maybe at the beginning of the unit, I explained why we need to know this stuff. And you're still asking this? The second thing, my metamorphosis, I started to applaud that question. Great question, Logan. Thank you for asking that. And then I would explain why it's relevant, why they need to know it, what's useful here. It wasn't doing it. Students are already skeptical. The students are asking that question. And even if only one student has, you know, the gall to ask it, the courage to ask that, it might be on the minds of many of your students if you're not making history relevant in your own. So instead, the third change, I realized what students need is not me telling them why it's relevant. They need to hear it from each other. They need to scratch their heads about it. And they need time to think, why does history matter? Why does this topic we're studying matter? The civil rights movement, the Silk Road, the Indian caste system. Why does this matter? Why do I need to think about this? Why waste our time and taxpayer money teaching us this? Okay. So I would say, great question, Logan. Turn to your neighbors. Start a little conversation. Try to come up with 2, maybe 3. Even if you only can get 1, that's okay. Why might this be useful? Take 2 minutes and talk to each other. Turn it into a teachable moment. But then I also realized I need to attack this question day 1, right? So, one last thing. Because if students see value in learning history and understand it can actually be helpful to them in their lives, they are more likely to genuinely engage in your class. Students have a lot of resistance because they're skeptical. Okay, and it makes it harder for them to actually give a darn. So they will be willing to struggle through something that's difficult. And we want them to struggle through what's difficult because that's where the gold is, right? Everything that's valuable lies on the other end of struggle in our classes because they have to think deeply to get there. And if they actually see like, oh, this is valuable, this is important for me to think about, they're more likely to accept that struggle. Okay. Also, you building up their confidence, right? But so I do this day 1 of class. Okay. I realized I want to hit them with relevance day 1 so they know why we're here the rest of the year. And I have thousands of teachers using these with so many reviews on how much it helped them, how it led to great discussions, great conversations. And then it's up to you to build on it for the rest of the year. If you have done this, if you haven't done this, you don't have to do it day 1. At the end of the unit you're on, be like, hey, I got a feeling that a lot of you aren't really understanding why we're here, like why history is actually valuable and important. This is in your freebies too. So you can go download that. Okay. 6 different reasons. I put them around the room and this becomes a stations activity. So day 1, they're having rich academic discussions on why history matters. And they go to each one and they're filling out this sheet. Okay. They just copy the quote, nice and easy. So they start with a win at each station. It's quiet for the first minute at each station and they have to think about the quote. Then they have 3 to 4 minutes to talk about it with their peers. What does this mean? Why does this, like, it can inspire us to make a difference in the world and make it a better place? How? So they talk about what that means. We might want to change things that we see are wrong. This one on the bottom, it can make us better people because we can learn about people who inspire us. Oh, like Martin Luther King or Gandhi or George Washington or whatever it is. These people can inspire us so that we want to do great things, so we believe in ourselves, whatever it is. They talk about it. And then what we do is day 1, we have a debate. Go to the corner, go to the station that you think is the best reason to study history. And on day 1 of class, or for you, middle of the year or middle of first quarter, end of first quarter, first day of second quarter, that might be like if you're wrapping up first quarter, I don't know where you guys are and when you start the school year, but this might be a great way to start second quarter. Hit them with relevance right at the get-go of second quarter. They're debating with one another on why this class matters, why they should care about it. Okay. In my course, I get into a couple different ways on how you can gamify debates and discussions like this. But here's the thing. So I did this like day 1 for several years. And then I kind of ended it there. But I then started to add this at the end of every unit, or most units, not everyone. Sometimes it's actually, we could do it in the middle of the unit too. We have a debate and a discussion. So we just studied the Indian caste system. And then I'll pose them this question and we'll have a little discussion. Maybe it's a 10-minute discussion. Maybe it leads to a 30-minute, 40-minute discussion. It takes a while for students to get there to that 40-minute discussion. I have a whole module on discussions in my course. If your students, to build up their confidence, to be able to speak, to build up their ability to ask good questions and build on each other's ideas. I have a whole module on that. Because the course teaches like a framework to build on all of these things. So why is the Indian caste system so important to study and learn from? They spend some time writing and then we come into a discussion. I was always amazed what I would get. Like, Indian caste system seems so far removed, seems so distant from us. But I would get answers like, it teaches us the value of family, because they learned how families would like support each other because they were like limited in who they could interact with. I would get stuff like not so that we don't discriminate against other people because they realize how untouchables and the Sudras, the lower classes. It teaches us the importance of opportunity and making sure you can chase your own dreams in life. Like you get like, whoa, what this is challenging them to do. You do this at the end of every unit. You're getting students to normalize looking for the silver lining, looking for the moral of the story. When you do this regularly, why does this matter, guys? Why are we studying about the civil rights movement? Why are we studying about the 1920s? Why are we studying about the American Revolution? Why does this matter? What's important for us to learn here? Okay. Because this is a big difference, guys. Are you teaching students about history, or are you getting them to learn from history? Because if they study the ancient Indian caste system and they just like learn a bunch of facts about it, okay, they learned about history. But if that changes them a little bit on how they treat other people who are different from them, or maybe born poorer or in a different like place than them, have more empathy for people around the world, then they're learning from history. And sometimes they don't even know that they are, but point it out to them so they see what's relevant. Okay. Now, if you think my students, they can't get into discussions, they struggle with that. Here's a little strategy that can help you. I call this in a single magnificent sentence. And it's a way to scaffold a rich discussion. Okay. It's a way to invite students in because it's so simple or deceptively simple. Give them this sentence frame. Some training wheels for your kids, and they might need it. Like I've done this with juniors in high school and it's helped them. Okay. The most important thing we must learn from studying the Roaring Twenties, antebellum America, Jacksonian democracy, to make the world a better place is. And you can change up this. I have several different single magnificent sentence frames in my course that I give you guys. This is just one. Students are going to come up with different answers. And when students have different answers and different things to share, that is better to lead to a discussion. Okay. And then you discuss. Every student can finish this sentence. Trust me. Okay. And then you could have them before the discussion talk in a small group, because if a student says, I don't really know, well, maybe they just worked with 3 or 4 people and it gave them some ideas, and then they can finish the sentence. You have a discussion. Maybe it falls flat after 3 minutes. It's hard. Your students are struggling. Okay, guys, what I want you to do is now add some more details to explain why you chose your answer. So you said we studied caste system because we're not going to, so that we don't just, it's going to make the world a better place because we learn not to discriminate against others. Elaborate, explain. Now they say, oh, well, the untouchables, this and that, and the way the higher classes would this and that. Maybe you tell them use 2 or 3 vocab words, turn this into a paragraph. Then now what do they have? They have more ammo. They have more things to bring up in the discussion. All right, let's keep it going. Who'd like to start off by reading their single magnificent paragraph? They read and you build from there. Okay. I also have ways to gamify academic discussions. So if your students really like competition, I have ways to gamify discussions so they're earning points, and it makes it a lot more fun. And it also just pulls in those students into the ability to have academic discussions. Okay. Another way we can make history relevant is by giving them opportunities to explore the world today. At days where, all right, guys, we're going to put down the past and we're going to look at today in order to make connections. Kids, they are really interested in learning about the world today. Sometimes when something big happens in the world that's related to history or like politics, all of a sudden they get interested. A few years ago, I had students coming in. You might, if you were teaching a few years ago, you'd remember this, asking you about Russia and Ukraine when the war first broke out. What's going on? Russia and Ukraine. Why did Russia invade Ukraine? What are we going to go to World War? Is there another World War III happening? Right? And a whole bunch of students are asking, all right, let's explore that. Especially if you were, imagine you were a US history teacher teaching World War II. Appeasement. All right, so should we appease Russia and let him, and just tell him, okay, after Ukraine, just don't go any further? Or maybe you studied the Cold War, which is more relevant. What should we follow the containment policy for Russia and try to isolate and try to push back? How does this compare to the Berlin airlift? Okay. Whatever it is, like those are teachable moments. And here, this is in your goodies. It's a template you can use any topic. It's so simple. Sometimes we make things complicated. We think that that's going to lead to better learning. It often doesn't. Sometimes simplicity helps and works because the students know what they have to do. All right, first box over here, right here, topics from history. Just write down a few things you know about. Let's go to the rise of totalitarianism. Write down a few things you remembered about how Hitler came to power, Stalin, Mussolini. Just jot down whatever you know. Maybe they use their notes and they have 5 minutes to record it. Then you give them a video, a reading, or they can just do some Google searches on their own. They need to learn how to become researchers, get reliable information. And they're going to now then start recording information about what's happening in China, how the Chinese government controls their people. Oh, they have video cameras in the classrooms, all over the streets, in every store, in every corporate building. That's kind of similar to how like Hitler had like the radios, except further, so they can be then taking it further. What changed? What continued? What did this teach you about the world? What really hit you from this lesson? There's different frames. What is a question you still have? What is something you're still wondering about? I love just get rid of, on your next worksheet you hand to students, get rid of one of your questions, and on the bottom write, what questions do you still have? What is something you're curious about on this topic? Normalize them asking questions, okay? That was a little side note. Okay, imagine, so students are going to be interested in that. They want what? Like they see Chinese schools today that kids are being evaluated. If they start slouching, they're losing credit points. Like kids are interested in that. Trust me, that they're putting Uyghurs in concentration camps and then like brainwashing them. They're interested in that. That relates to history. All of a sudden, yeah. And doesn't studying what happened in the 1930s help us better understand this today? Oh, it does. It's almost like, this is weird, but it's almost like history like helps us understand the world better today. Huh? Right? Help them internalize that. Don't just tell students, history helps us understand the world better. We often tell students that, but then we don't give them opportunities to see it. This is a way to see it. And I have several other ways in my course on how to do that. And it can make a difference because they realize in your class, they are learning how to understand the world and that history is a tool to do that. Okay. And you might just think, what is a topic you're teaching now or soon that you could jump into something going on with that issue today or an issue connected? Like even this one, like castles. Imagine you were studying the Middle Ages and, you know, castles come up and you're doing feudalism. Well, how are castles being used today? Maybe you take a virtual tour and go explore a specific castle. That would be cool. Kids are going to like that. Okay. Why aren't castles being used for fortifications? What's changed in the world, right? So, last strategy, my favorite. My kids love these. And I wished for the first 10 years of because I only really started to use these my last 2 years in the classroom routinely. And now I still get to do them online with my 8-push students. History, decisions, simulations. Have students stare down a real historical crisis. This checks off pretty much all the boxes that I want for my ideal lessons. Maybe there could be more student choice. That's one thing it doesn't hit on, but it gets them really thinking deeply about history. It gets them imagining themselves in the past. It gets them developing critical thinking and, more importantly for me, problem-solving skills, how to solve a real problem. It also leads to some civic lessons because they understand what the role of the president is, what he can and can't do, or what the office can and can't do, and also what citizens can do. Because you can do these with presidents, or you can also do it like with Martin Luther King. How are you going to get African Americans the right to vote? What strategies would you use? Okay, so let's look at some of these. But first, imagine, instead of just teaching students about how Kennedy handled the Cuban Missile Crisis, they act as the president and members of XCOM, his group, and they have to develop their own solution. Or for world history, students act as Gandhi and have to develop a plan to gain independence for India using a non-violent approach. Do you think they're going to remember what actually happened more? Yeah. Now, is it really, really, really important that students remember that Kennedy did a blockade to solve this? No. What's really important? what's important is they realize how close to nuclear war we got. And this will teach them that, because they are putting themselves in Kennedy's shoes and in his advisors' shoes. And they have to think critically. The other thing that's really important is they realize what it took to solve this. If we did an invasion of Cuba, what are the potential benefits of that? What are the drawbacks? What are the unintended consequences? They're having to really think deeply about this issue, wrestle with history. You might think, what would my students like about this? What would be challenging for them? And how can you help with that? You might want to pause and think about that. Okay, fill that out on your note sheet. But what this does is it squeezes the juicy drama out of history. It causes good stress. We want, like, if students are apathetic, like, that's a part of the problem. They're apathetic. But imagine they were a little stressed, like, oh my God, how do we get independence for India? Guys, what do we do? Like we've been controlled for Britain for hundreds of years. They're like taking away our freedom. They're sapping all our resources. What do we do? That won't work. We can't fight against them. We can't, like, they're not just going to listen to a petition. What do we really do? Right? That is what we want. Because it leads to that engagement. It leads to the curiosity and excitement. So these are the ingredients for a great history decision simulation. Roll cards. Notice on this one, some of my history decision simulations, there are other specific roles. Sometimes it's just one specific person and then advisors. Press secretary is like the recorder, right? But what I always do is have advisor 1 and advisor 2 be at odds with each other. So they don't all just agree. Oh yeah, let's Whiskey Rebellion. Let's all just like send in the military and kill them all. You want one to either be a little more conservative or liberal, aggressive or cautious, right? So that you're stimulating disagreements and better debates in their groups. Okay, so roll cards. Number 2 is a timeline. What were some events that led up to this event? So they have some context. Also, sometimes an event in the timeline is a clue on how this could be solved, because they're understanding what led to it, right? And if you know the causes, you might be able to develop the antidote for it, okay? Number 3 is a briefing or a report, presidential briefing, top secret. If you don't have a top secret stamp, go to the special ed office and they'll have like a confidential. You can do that, stamp it in red, confidential. Kids love it. It makes them actually want to read sometimes, trick them into reading. And it just makes it a little more interesting, a little more novel, okay? Now, these can take a while to write. In my course, I teach how you can use artificial intelligence, ChatGPT, to save you a ton of time with like specific prompts, and then they shoot it out and then you can edit it from there. Sometimes it's a little wrong. Or you can mention, like, use these terms in it, but you also want to make sure you're in this report, you want to build some tension. You want to make it a crisis. You want to make them care so they see how important it is that they take it seriously, right? All right. And then this is just this one is in your freebies, a universal template that helps them really, it helps them scaffold the problem solving skills they need. What are the different things they need to think about to actually take this seriously that someone who was facing a problem would have to think about, right? Unintended consequences. What limitations do you have? What could go wrong? How do you ensure that this doesn't go wrong? If you're the president, how do you sell this to the American people? Okay, how do you show them that this is in their best interest, right? So they're also thinking about, oh, that's the presidents actually have to think about this stuff, right? Civics, twisted into history, combined. All right, here's just some examples. I actually had these on my site, historyforhumans.com. You can get any of those. It comes with everything. Click and engage for your students. Presidential decisions. If you're not a U.S. history teacher, here's some world history ones, like Hammurabi's Code. Like, you are this first ruler. These are the things going on in your empire or your civilization or your city-state, what would we call it? I never taught that. So how do you develop? What set of laws would you create to stabilize and to bring some level of justice? Okay, so they got to create codes. That would be much cooler than just learning about them, answering some questions. What kind of laws did they have? Oh, they had this law, they had this law. Imagine they had to create the laws. They're going to be much more tied into that history. Maybe they're a Qin ruler. You're teaching ancient China. There was legalism, Confucianism, Taoism. Which one would be best as a philosophy for your country and for your government to follow? Maybe they're a Silk Road merchant, a commoner, and they got to think about which route to go, what city to go to, what merchandise to bring. spices, silk, tortoise shells, like whatever they were, gunpowder. Maybe you're Galileo and you got to think about how to bring this up to the church, how to teach this, knowing that you're going to get resistance from the Catholic Church. Maybe you're a labor leader and you got to think about, how do I get my workers' rights when this is the context I'm facing? We could get fired. Do we do a strike? Do we do petitions? Do we do walkouts? Do we have to organize secretly? They got to figure that out. Yalta Conference, I love that one during World War II. What kid cares about the Yalta Conference? I'm a teacher, I barely care about it. But imagine they had to come up with the terms of surrender and then some rules for the post-war world. The chances are they're going to care a little bit more about the Yalta Conference. Okay. What topic you might think? What topic am I teaching next week? Because it'll take a little time to plan, even with ChatGPT helping you. What topic might be good for a decision simulation? Okay. And how can I implement it? Okay. But here's the thing. If you do this routinely, you're going to get students actively engaged on the regular in your class and experiencing history while building real world skills. Okay. And the other thing is, when you're doing these routinely, like I try to do these once a unit for my push students, every unit they're doing one of these. You will not have to spend so much time explaining directions to your students, because after they do it once, oh, but I know what to do. I read the briefing, I look at the timeline for clues, I have to follow my roles, I know the different things on the sheet. They get really good at it, and your class becomes so much more efficient because you're doing routine activities. My whole course, these decision simulations, they're the only ones that are pretty time intensive to create, even though there's a major hack and you can do them pretty quickly now with artificial intelligence. The majority of what I teach in the course is like no prep and low prep activities that you can do all year long. And class, just students develop competencies. They're not frustrated because they know what to do. They know how to do it. And they can, instead of trying to spend, I used to do so many different activities all the time, hands-on stuff, writing nursery rhymes, creating children's books, acting different stuff out all the time. And then they had to spend so much time thinking about, what do I need to do for this activity? What are these steps? What does the direction say? They mess it up along the way, got to redirect them. It was causing headaches for me and the students. When you actually do routine things within a framework that's all working together, right? I'm just introducing a little bit of the framework here, but in my course, we go full framework, how to build all these things that all work together, okay? To get curiosity, to get excitement, to get confidence. That's what the framework builds. And your class just becomes so much more efficient, and students feel much more safe because they know what's expected. Okay. So if you are interested in that course, I'm telling you, I believe in this so much. I'm not a salesman, I'm a teacher, but I know this will help you. I know this will lead you at the end of the week to feel better about what you're doing. Be less stressed, be less exhausted, have more energy. My course is Make History Engaging, Exciting, and Empowering. It's actually, I don't even think I have the darn URL here. It's engaginghistory.com, engaginghistory.com. Sorry about that. You can tell I'm not a salesman. These are the different modules. So besides like welcoming you in, getting you a whole bunch of resources, there's cheat sheets, there's a workbook so that you can start applying everything you're learning to your students. That's all included. $150 worth of resources comes with it. Okay. So you got some, you get a lot more when you're in the course, things you can use right away. Unit after unit. Most of them are like universal templates you can keep using. How to level up the lecture, because we're going to lecture at least a little bit, how to make it more impactful and interactive. History decisions, we go deeper into it, how to set up really good ones. And it comes with several pre-made decisions activities. How to do virtual tours. So students are actually not just like looking at pictures of the Great Wall of China, they're visiting it and then writing about it in interesting ways, with postcards, with travel blogs, with scrapbooks, primary sources, how to make, I have lots of low and no prep activities that will help primary sources like come alive and help all your students be successful, how to differentiate it for your lower level kids. Okay, I have a 5th grade teacher who I said, I don't know if this course is going to help you as a 5th grade teacher, and she loved it. She said she was able to use pretty much every strategy I taught. History labs, how to make inquiry fun and empowering, where kids are solving real controversies. Why did the United States enter World War I? Why did Truman decide to drop the atomic bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki? And they have to look at a whole bunch of sources, wrestle with history to come up with an answer. Okay, you can do CSI activities if you want, turn it into like a crime scene. How to make history relevant. I get into several other activities. I introduced 2 to you today. There's a whole module there. And then there's student-led discussions, how to get kids talking, asking questions, debating, Harkness discussions, Socratic smackdowns, lots of stuff like that. And then how to plan out your year so that these things are building on each other. Okay. We can take a quick sneak peek into the course. This is what it looks like. So it's just videos for each of the units. You follow along, you have lifetime access. You can rewatch as you need to. And I'm still adding to it. So more is to come. And once you purchase it, it's yours forever. And yeah, there's resources that go with a lot of them to implement into your rooms right away. Okay. And just a couple more things. So engaginghistory.com, you can learn more about it. But this is my guarantee. If you think these little strategies that I taught in this little 60-minute session is going to help your students, trust me, the course is going to take it so much further, because it really gets into the framework on how these build on each other. You're going to feel more rejuvenated. Okay. The course, I'll tell you, is normally 300. You're going to be able to get it for 200. Is that worth it to feel at least even if it's just a little better every week at the end of the class period? Okay. Feeling like you're doing the job that you wanted to do when you sign up to be a teacher. Okay. You're also going to be able to save, I promise you're going to be able to save a lot of time prepping and planning, because my strategies, most of them are low and no prep. Okay. And here's just what some of the teachers are saying. Pretty much everyone who's taken it, except for a couple people who had to drop because of some personal issues, have given me a glowing review and told me how much it's helped them. Here's Jade on the bottom. I firmly believe this course has helped me along the path to becoming the teacher I always wanted to be. Thank you, Jade. Dan's strategies inject joy into the classroom for both teaching and for both students and teachers. Got that reversed. This course is a game changer. Okay. Dan's course was exactly what I needed to completely overhaul my classes and grab students by their brains. The lesson I was able to create with Dan's methods were exciting, dynamic, and unique. And it made me look forward to summer ending. Here's Nicole. The most reluctant students are now engaged and thriving after applying his strategies into our everyday routine. And here's a lot more. I'm not going to read them all. But if you're not satisfied, if you're not feeling like this is really helping you, you can get 100% of your money back. No questions asked. 30 days you can go through the whole course in 30 days. And if you're like, nah, I learned a lot, but it just didn't meet what Dan said it was going to do, I didn't feel like it helped that much, you can get your money back. Okay. So it's $199 for you if you use this code by Friday, the 29th. Okay. So I would love to see you in there. If you want to join now, you can click on your resource sheet and take you to the course. There's also a link with a pre-made template for your school to pay for this, to see if your admin would pay for the cover the course of to cover the cost of the course. That was hard. So you can tweak it to fit your style and what your principal might want to hear. Your district also might do it. So you could also forward it to your district coaches, resource teachers, and just let them know what this course is about, what it's worth. However, if your school's going to pay for it, the $199, the discount rate is for individual teachers. Schools have to pay the full rate. Sorry about that, but I just have to play the cards like that for this. Okay, so $299. If there's any questions, you have any concerns, let me know. Shoot me an email. You have it. It's Dan@history4humans, FORhumans.com. And yeah, but I would love to see you in there. I promise you, you will not regret it. Yeah. So that's it. Thanks for coming. I hope this little masterclass was useful for you. Take good care now. Okay. Good luck. I hope you use some of these strategies this week and start pushing the kids to be a little more curious, a little more confident, and a little more excited.